Okay, what you're looking at here is an argument form. We have two premises that are said to lead to a conclusion. The first premise is P wedge Q. Second premise is tilde P, and the conclusion is Q. And what this argument is saying is this. Either the statement represented by P is true, or the statement represented by Q is true, or both are true. Okay, so the first premise is our wedge statement, our disjunctive statement, and then look what the second premise does. The second premise jumps in and it says tilde P. In other words, P's not true, tilde P is true. And the conclusion says, well, if P is not true, and the first premise asserts that either P or Q is true, then Q has to be true. So we have one premise that's presenting us with two possibilities and another premise that's eliminating one of those two possibilities. And when this happens, we have what's called a disjunctive syllogism, or a DS. And any argument with this form is valid. It doesn't matter what the statements are that are represented by P and Q. When we have one premise that presents us with two options and another premise that comes in and removes one of those options, we know that that other option in the wedge statement has to be a true statement. Now, what's important to recognize here is the order of the premises doesn't matter. So in categorical logic, when we were working with argument forms, the ordering of the premises was critical. But in truth functional or propositional logic, what's most important is how the two statements how the premises are interacting with one another. Okay? So the really important feature to recognize in the disjunctive syllogism is that one premise is removing one of the options presented in the other. So when we looked in an earlier lecture at the argument, either Sam's going to buy a new car or his family's going to disown him, we proved with the truth table that if Sam doesn't buy a new car in that situation, then his family's going to disown him. Okay. What we also learned in that earlier lecture is that if it's true that either Sam is going to buy a new car and his family's going to disown him, and Sam buys the new car, in other words, one of the two options presented in the disjunctive statement is asserted to be true, that doesn't allow us to draw any conclusions about the truth value of the other statement in the disjunctive syllogism. So what's really important in the disjunctive syllogism is that one of the premises is negating one of the statements in the disjunctive statement. Now, there's one exception to that, and that is what's called exclusive disjunction. Inclusive disjunction includes the possibility that both of the statements on each side of the wedge are true statements. Okay, could be true statements. But in exclusive disjunction, they can't both possibly be true. It has to be one or the other. And it has to be one or the other because what appears on each side of the wedge is the same statement, just negated. So if P represents the statement, Sam's going to buy a new car, then we might read this first premise as either Sam's going to buy a new car or he's not going to buy a new car. Well, if he did buy a new car, as the second premise asserts here, then it has to be the case that it's false that he didn't buy a new car. And that's what that dreaded double tilde means, okay? The double tilde means it's not the case that this statement is false, or it's not the case that it's not the case, all right?